So what I'm going to share today is it's a case study, a very short experience working with first-year students in the architecture program in the spring of this year, between January and March, and how I took advantage of teaching this class to introduce students some sustainability practices in architectural design. The work was part of a coordinated studio during the spring in the Bachelor's of Architecture program. So the goal of the project, specific project, was for the students to design and fabricate a light and deployable shelter that had to be made out of repurposed and recycled elements as the main materials. These were some of the learning objectives of the course. Even though many of the students have a good foundation on sustainability practices from their education in high school, and all of them, of course, are very well informed about what sustainability means, or in this case was for them the first time to talk about how one phase of sustainability can be addressed in architectural design, and actually in construction, and related to the use of material resources. So the goal was to put students in contact with materials, with real materials, understand what's the cycle of these materials, where are they coming from, where they're going to, and where do they end up, and to analyze the process of reusing materials, or using them for construction purposes, and how they transform or readapt these materials, what tools they will need. And lastly, to help them to understand or at least put a seed on understanding the impact of our practice in the natural environment, which we all know that construction has a very significant impact on the creation of gases in the environment. So that was the main goal of this course. The structure of the course was included a series of lectures and some assignments. The lectures try to showcase different case studies of buildings that use materials, main resource. And the goal was to offer an overview of contemporary practices that claim to rethink the value of waste as a resource, and how these materials were repurposed or transformed or reprocessed, and of course the opportunities they bring to architecture. This was connected to what I was doing for my PhD, which was about designing these new cycles to reuse paper-based materials. So it was a way of putting in practice in this course. These are some of the practical exercises where students have to choose a set of materials and identify where they can get the materials from, and start experimenting with them to build panels. This looks like, I think, like books, but the idea is that each one of the sides of this book it's a panel, and then how they can join them using different materials. Some of them experimented with using tape. You can see that there is hardware there, cutting the materials, layering them. Some of them decided to work with fabrics. Most of them had to work with paper-based materials. And the idea was to use these prototypes to build a small shelter. Of course, as part of an architectural program exercise, there is a lot of visual representation exercises as well, but we push them to develop all these diagrams and notes where they're expressing how they want to use these materials, what's their advantage of using the materials, and how to transform them. So these are other pictures of how these shelters started to look like. The shelters were not intended for housing or for living there. Of course, these were more like an abstract theme for them to practice on real scale. These are previous prototypes before the final prototype that they were testing and seeing how to reinforce these materials. There was a lot of sketching, of course, in the process, thinking how to reuse these materials and what kind of shapes they can build and how to transport them, which were other variables of the project as well. More pictures about models on full scale that they were building in studio. And these notes that represent like that they were thinking not only on the large scale, but they were also thinking on how to make the details out of this, and how, what materials they can combine, and then how to disassemble everything for recycling. These are other visual representations. This is from a group that was designing this rounded kind of pavilion looking shelter. On the right, you can see that they detail, these are first year students, so it was their first time in contact with a construction process. So for them, learning to detail the materials they were using and how to connect them was a very interesting part. And these are some videos of the final shelters they have to assemble and disassemble. In this case, this specific group, they wanted, I think they donated this shelter to a primary school, where they use for the kids for as a learning pod for reading. This is how it looks. You can see that there is a lot of cardboard, there is a lot of plastics, there is a lot of fabric. 95% of these materials were all like recovered from somewhere else in campus or from outside campus. Another example with a different type of shelter. In this case, these students were inspired by origami shapes and used cardboard to create this kind of shelf that could be easily folded. They created this floor that was insulated, and then imagine a kind of transportation system that could be easily incorporated. The last one, this was probably the most challenging of them, but they were trying to build this kind of dome system with cardboard and plastics, and of course there were a lot of challenges on putting the structure to work, but the main goal was for them to have contact with the materials, understand their cycle, and also learn by making mistakes. Of course, this was a very specific approach related to the material, to design, to assembly, but something that we all learn well know is that to make this something more like impactful, it needs to have a multidisciplinary approach here. So not only the vision from designers or architects or builders, but also the vision from people who are related to the waste collection system, for example. So what's very important to see that how critical is to have a multidimensional approach, not only to visualize this on the virtual world, but also trying to understand how it works and act based on what they understood of this cycle of materials.